Marty, I've set this thing for 2020. I think that's going to be a great year. Let's go, Marty.
Hello and welcome back to part 2 of our making of series, where we attempt to recreate the iconic Archer Space Patrol Walkie Talkie as seen in the Back to the Future trilogy of movies. In the first episode we looked at the basic design in 3D here, and some of the hard jobs that we needed to do to get this to look fairly similar. I mean, I'm working from photographs, so I haven't got an original radio, but I think I did a pretty good job in the first one. But there are a few things that I needed to iron out. If you've watched the first one, you'll know the few design clues which I've kind of missed, so I needed to sort those out. But if you haven't already watched the first one, please go ahead and watch that now. Anyway, there's the original set of radios, and they had this slight raised feature to them. That's something I've addressed, and I was going to put a sound module inside this unit to play clips from the movie. Now, the logo on the front is very fine text, and it's very, very hard to print that. So I've put this as an interchangeable item, so I can print it at a much higher resolution without having to print the whole case in such a high resolution, which takes a very long time. Now, it's not perfect, and the text could probably do with a bit more clearer quality. So I think if I was going to do this properly, I would use a resin printer for this part, because they make really great detail, as you can see from those pictures. Anyway, I wanted to add in the PTT button, so I've got some very small micro lever switches here, which I've used on other projects, which are fantastic for this type of thing, if space is tight particularly, and it is inside this walkie-talkie, believe me. So anyway, I bought some different slide switches, double pole, double throw variant, and I attempted to get this thing disassembled so we could fit it properly inside the case. Now, there are a few things that I would needed to do to get this in. One was to remove the battery and to put it inside the case, and the other was to move the speaker so it would actually be audible through the grill in the front of the unit. And to do this, I fashioned in a space inside for all of these items, recessed the speaker in, dropped the switch and made that so it's self-contained, and it all fitted in tight but rather nicely. Anyway, the battery can be simply cut out and rewired and moved, and on paper and on the CAD, let's just say, I managed to get the radius that I needed on the front of that, although on the 3D printer it came out a little bit stepped. Now, I can fix that by printing the case vertically. You can see there, you can notice the definite slight stepping in the but still I think the overall effect is pretty decent. But I have printed one of these since vertically, and you don't get that problem. So anyway, I was really pleased with how the most of this came out. It always looks rough on the inside out because that's where all the support material is. One thing I think I admitted to do was to make space for the switch and the USB charging port, so I've tweaked that. But on this particular one, I've just took out a Dremel tool and I've cut it out so it fits properly. The battery is fairly easy on these, just to unpeel it from the self-adhesive off the back and drop it in place. And all the other components, as you probably expect, all dropped into place fairly well. And some of these items, because they're only, this is only a prototype still really, are just going to be held in with a little dab of hot glue. And you see that, to be honest, on a lot of official Chinese products. Now, the PTT button, I probably will use springs for that in time. The foam is just there temporary, as a temporary fix just for now. And for the antenna, this antenna isn't quite right. I've got some on order which will enable me to put a smaller tip. That tip on the top of it is a little bit too big, but I'm just waiting for delivery of those. So anyway, I got all the bits together on the mat and fired up the soldering iron, and it didn't take too long to assemble, as you can imagine. I used the multicoloured jumper wires which I had lying around, which are quite useful for these sorts of projects, and they're inexpensive and fairly cheap if you haven't got reels of different coloured cable lying around. So anyway, I was really pleased with the finish of the outside of the case again. It's very close in colour-wise to the original one. Remember, the actual retail radios were much darker. The one they actually used as a prop in the film, I think, was specially made. It was much lighter in colour. So if you want to match one of these, you're much better off going with a sort of a drainpipe grey colour there, rather than a darker grey, which it definitely wasn't that in the movie. So anyway, I think you'll agree it does look really, really smart, and I think probably what you want to do now is listen to how it sounds, because it does sound superb.
Yes, you can. Remember, both of our futures depend on this. You don't have to remind me of that, Doc. Here's some binoculars and a walkie-talkie so we can keep in contact. I'll stay here and try to repair the sword and find certain. Doc, come in, Doc. This is Marty, over. Roger, Marty. This is Doc. Are you there?
Got it the wrong way around there. So I'm really happy with this. I'm going to make a little display stand and pop it up on the shelf, and it's ideal for like cosplayers, people like that. They like these decent type props, and good for the kids to mess around and play Back to the Future games. For me, it'll probably be something that Tyler probably plays with for a bit, but it'll probably just end up on the shelf as an interesting talking point when we have guests around anyway.
Marty. Great Scots. 2020 is very wrong. We've got to go back and fix this, Marty.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. We'll catch you on the next one.